Welcome back. Grab your popcorn and a lot of Red Bull. Members of the Senate are expected to stay up all night talking and talking and talking and talking and talking about climate change. Democrats want to, quote, wake up Congress to the disturbing realities of climate change. 28 senators are expected to speak tonight, 26 Democrats and 2 independents, including my next guest, Senator Bernie Sanders, independent from Vermont. We'll get to that all-nighter in a moment, but first, Senator Sanders, I wanted to actually first apologize. I have a dry cleaning issue, so I'm here au naturel, as maybe you'll be on the floor when it cuts to 3 a.m. But first, I wanted to talk about the way you're in the news this week for your announcement that you said you're prepared to be a candidate for president. A lot of people cheering to that, a lot of strong reactions. That will mean a whole lot of fundraising, and campaign finance reform is a big issue that you have championed extensively. This week, and this is why I wanted to ask this, a Supreme Court decision could come and change fundamentally the way that campaign finance is handled on the basis of individual contributions. That's McCutcheon versus the Federal Election Commission, and it would end the limit, potentially, on how an individual can give over a 2-year period. You were actually there when the court heard its first oral arguments in October on this case, and you spoke at a rally afterwards. Tell me why this issue is so important to you.
Ronan, here is my great fear. And my great fear is that both economically and politically, this nation is moving toward an oligarchic form of society where a handful of billionaires are going to control the political life and the economic life of this nation. And what this Supreme Court case is about, and what Citizens United is all about, is saying to large corporations and billionaires, you can spend as much money as you want on the political process. You can buy and sell candidates. You can do everything you want to create a right-wing agenda which will benefit the wealthy at the expense of everybody else. This is not what American democracy is supposed to be about. This is what oligarchy is supposed to be about, and it is why, among other things, I believe in public funding of elections, and why we're working hard to try to overturn Citizens United, and why we fear very, very much this new Supreme Court case.
Who in Congress are standing in the way of campaign finance reform, in your opinion?
Look, virtually all Republicans, not all, but virtually all. They understand that at the end of the day, when you have families like the Koch brothers or Sheldon Adelson, people who make billions and billions of dollars every single year, their wealth is increasing, they can spend hundreds of millions of dollars on campaigns which by and large will benefit Republicans. Are there some billionaires who help Democrats? Yes, there are. But the vast majority of the money are going to go to right-wing extremist candidates. So from Mitch McConnell's perspective, and he himself, as the minority leader in the Senate, has been very active on these issues, he understands that opening up the floodgates of corporate money, of billionaire money, will help the right wing and the Republican Party.
I do have to caveat there, and we have a lot I want to get to, so I won't dwell on this, but I do believe the numbers are big for both parties on this. We have, billionaire, as you said, oligarch money flowing into both sides here. We'll come back to that question of partisanship, but first, some have suggested that lifting this 2-year donation limit would be actually maybe helpful, since more individual freedom of this type could offset the role of outside groups that were encouraged by Citizens United. What do you say to that argument?
I don't. Look, at the end of the day, you do not want a political system which is heavily dominated by wealthy individuals. That's not what American society is supposed to be about. And Ronan, I think people have no idea about the amount of time that members of Congress in both parties, that candidates spend. All they do is raise money. They spend half their lives raising money. And you've got to go where the money is, and the money is with wealthy people. So if you're going to the wealthy to ask for campaign contributions, your political views are going to be shaped by that reality. You're not worried about the high unemployment in this country. You're not worried about the need to create millions of jobs. You're not worried about the fact that we have more people living in poverty than any time in our history. What you're worried about are the needs of the wealthy and the powerful. So I believe very strongly that we have got to junk this campaign finance situation we're in right now and move to public funding of elections.
Thank you for spending the time on that issue. It is something that too few on the Hill are focusing on, and whatever your opinions on it, it needs to be talked about. So thank you for that. Now, quickly returning to that all-nighter, Democrats control this Senate. Wouldn't it be a better use of time to actually introduce legislation rather than making a statement by staying up late?
Well, you got to do both, and we have introduced legislation. Senator Barbara Boxer and I have introduced probably the most comprehensive climate change legislation ever introduced, which, among other things, calls for a tax on carbon, which would invest very, very substantially in energy efficiency and sustainable energy. But I think what we're trying to do now, in terms of tonight, is to make the American people aware that the debate about climate change really is over, that the scientific community is virtually unanimous in agreeing that climate change is real, that it is caused by human activity, that it is already causing devastating problems in the United States and around the world. So what we're doing now is speaking to the American people and saying, you have got to be involved in this process, because if you are not, the planet that we're going to leave to our kids and our grandchildren will be significantly less habitable than the one we have today, and will cause enormous problems at great expense in terms of trying to address. So we've got to act now, and that's what we're trying to do.
All right. Thank you so much. Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders will be watching your work on this closely.